You wake up and something is wrong. A deep ache, a fever, a pain that wasn't there yesterday. And you do the automatic thing. You reach for a phone, a doctor, a pharmacy, a number you can call at 3 in the morning. A whole invisible machine exists to catch you, and you barely think about it. Now take all of it away. No doctor, no pill, no word for infection. You are 10,000 years old, and something inside you has gone badly wrong. So what happens? The answer everyone assumes is nothing. You suffer, you get lucky, or you die. That's it. That's prehistoric medicine. That's wrong, not slightly wrong, spectacularly wrong. Ancient humans performed surgery on the living human skull, and the patient survived it. They carried fungus that kills the exact parasite in their gut. They marked treatment points onto their own aching joints. They had a pharmacy. It grew outside. But the biggest discovery isn't a herb or a blade. It's something much quieter, buried in a cave in Iraq, and it changes what the word medicine even means. So what did you actually do 10,000 years ago when your own body turned against you? What happens if I get sick? Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends. Honest answer, Pebble. It depends entirely on one person. Not a building, not a system. One person in your group who knows things. Every group had a Nana. Someone who had watched hundreds of illnesses, remembered what followed what, and carried a pouch of things that seemed to help. And none of it was written down. It lived in one head, and it moved by being spoken. Lose that person suddenly, and you lose the medicine. Which is why teaching mattered as much as treating. Nana isn't just healing people. She's loading a library into whoever will sit still and listen. And Gramps predictably has a view. Gramps thinks the whole business was superstition, chanting spirits and hoping for the best. In his telling, they had no idea what they were doing. They waved herbs about, muttered at the sky, and the strong ones happened to recover. Hold that, Gramps. We're coming back for it. Because when we finally looked inside an ancient medicine pouch, it wasn't full of nonsense. What was in the pouch? Plants. And here's what people miss. Plants are not gentle. Plants are chemistry, full of compounds evolved to poison whatever tries to eat them. Get the dose right, and a poison becomes a treatment. Get it wrong, and it stays a poison. That line is thin, and knowing where it sits is real expertise. Which is why Nana's rule is absolute. She describes. She never prescribes. Everything in that pouch is something she watched work, and something she watched go wrong. And the same from me, plainly. Everything here is archaeology, not advice. These are things people did. None of it is a suggestion for anyone watching. Take bog moss, found with a 5,000-year-old body. It's absorbent and naturally acidic, which slows bacteria. It is functionally a bandage. Nobody had a germ theory. Nobody knew bacteria existed. But somebody noticed that wounds packed with this went bad less often, and they remembered. That's the engine of all of it. Not magic, not science either, just thousands of years of people paying very close attention to what happened next. But plants are the easy part, because ancient humans did something considerably more alarming than brewing a tea. What's the worst thing they ever did? Archaeologists have found more than 1,500 ancient skulls from every inhabited continent, with holes deliberately made in them. It's called trepanation, scraping, cutting, or drilling an opening through the bone of a living person's skull. It is the oldest surgery we know of. And before you picture something barbaric, hold on. Because the detail that matters isn't the hole at all. It's the edge of the hole. Cut bone and the person dies, and that edge stays sharp forever. Bone only heals if there is a living body around it doing the healing. And on a huge number of these skulls, the edges are smooth, rounded, grown over, new bone laid down slowly across months, which means the patient did not die on the stone. They woke up, they healed, they walked around for years with a hole in their head and got on with life. And not rarely. Reviews of prehistoric trepanation put survival somewhere between 50 and 90%, depending on the site and the period. Sit with that. Skull surgery with stone tools, no anesthetic, no antiseptic, no concept that infection existed, and most people lived. Partly it's technique. They scraped rather than punched, working slowly through the outer bone and stopping before the membrane over the brain. That restraint is the skill. Anyone can make a hole. Knowing exactly when to stop is the entire difference between a patient and a corpse. And it was often done for reasons that make sense. A blow to the head from a club or a fall. The skull cracks, blood pools inside, pressure builds. Open the skull, clear the fragments, let the pressure out, and the person might live. That is not superstition. That is a correct intervention. A version of it is still performed today. Modern surgeons open the skull to relieve pressure after brain injuries. Different tools. Same underlying idea. So let's settle up with Gramps, who told us this was all chanting and hoping. A 50 to 90% survival rate is not luck. That's a procedure. But Ivy has spotted the hole in all that. And she's right too. You've proved they survived it. You haven't proved why they did it. Those are not the same thing. Take the skull from Ensisheim in France. A man of about 50, roughly 7,000 years old, opened twice, and he survived both times. And when they examined him for a reason, a fracture, a tumor, a disease, anything, they found nothing at all. Somebody opened a healthy man's skull. Twice. We have no idea why. Do we know anyone's name? No names. But we have one person we know better than almost anyone alive. He was found in an Alpine glacier, and the ice kept him for 5,000 years. We call him the Iceman. And because the cold preserved his gear, his gut, and his skin, we can do something impossible. We can read his medical history. He was not well, worn joints, gallstones, gum disease, and in his intestines a population of whipworm, a parasite that brings cramping pain and misery. Now here's what he was carrying. Birch polypore fungus. That fungus contains a compound active against whipworm. Read that again. The man had a specific parasite, and strapped to his kit was a specific fungus effective against that specific parasite. In his stomach, they also found bracken fern, used against intestinal parasites. That's two separate things aimed at the same problem. This is a man who knew something was wrong inside him and was doing something about it. That isn't superstition. That's a treatment plan. Then there are the tattoos. 61 of them in 19 groups. Not pictures, simple lines and crosses clustered on his lower back, knees, ankles, and wrists. Exactly the joints that were worn out. Exactly where he would have hurt. And around 80% fall along lines acupuncturists still use for back and abdominal pain. Carefully, though. That's a correlation. And the researchers say so themselves. Their wording is that it cannot be ruled out the tattoos were a treatment. But who looked after them? That question turns out to be the whole answer. And for it, we go much further back, 45,000 years or more, to a cave in northern Iraq. Inside, archaeologists found a Neanderthal man, and his skeleton is a catalog of catastrophe. A crushing blow to the left side of his face, which likely cost the sight in that eye. His right arm withered and gone below the elbow. A damaged leg. Probably deaf. One arm, one eye, a bad leg. In an Ice Age landscape where staying alive meant hunting dangerous animals and outrunning worse ones. He could not have hunted. He could not have gathered enough. By every brutal arithmetic of that world, he should have been dead within weeks. He lived at least another 10 years. We know because his injuries healed. Bone knitted, wounds closed. He grew old. Which means that for 10 years, somebody fed him. Somebody moved him when the group moved. Somebody kept him warm, kept him clean, and kept him alive. And that's the reversal. The oldest medicine we can actually prove isn't a plant. It isn't a blade. It's a decision. A decision that a person who can no longer hunt, or carry, or contribute anything at all, is still one of us, and still gets fed. Long before anyone understood infection or anatomy or what a heart was for, humans had already worked out the single thing that keeps sick people alive. Somebody staying. And he isn't a one-off. Once you know to look for it, the pattern turns up across the record. In the mountains of southern Italy, a young man was born with a form of dwarfism that made ordinary hunting impossible in that landscape. He survived anyway, which means his group adjusted. They changed what they expected of him, and they kept him. That's not a lucky accident. That's a society making room. And that reframes everything we just looked at. The fungus, the moss, the hole in the skull, none of it works on its own. Open someone's skull and walk away and they die. The surgery only counts because of the weeks afterwards. Somebody washed that wound. Somebody carried food over. The blade gets the credit. The nursing did the work. And that is still true in every hospital operating tonight. Now the honest part, because Ivy would insist, all of this is inference. Archaeologists argue about it, and the argument is a real one. Some read compassion. Others read cold strategy. That an experienced elder was worth keeping for what he knew, whatever anyone felt about him. Maybe he held knowledge worth keeping. Maybe he was simply loved. The bones prove somebody kept him alive. They cannot tell us what was in their hearts while they did it. And that's the limit of all of it. We can read the bone. We can test the residue. We cannot read the intention. The kindness, if it was kindness, didn't fossilize. So the honest summary is small and strange. We know they cut, and we know people lived. We know less about why than we'd like, and nothing about who. We don't have a single healer's name. Not one. Every remedy we've dug up was somebody's grandmother's memory, and every one of those people is anonymous. Thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, carried in heads, handed down by voice. And the only trace left is what happened to be buried with it. So come back. It's this morning you're unwell, and you reach for the phone. That whole machine behind it, the clinic, the pharmacy, the training, is very new. A couple of centuries of it, against 45,000 years of the other thing. Because underneath the machine, the actual instruction hasn't changed once. Someone notices you're unwell. Someone brings you something. Someone sits with you until it passes. That's the oldest medicine there is. It predates every drug, every theory, and every hospital, and you already know exactly how to do it. A Neanderthal with one arm lived 10 more years because his people decided he was worth the trouble. That's the whole of medicine, 450 centuries early. Though the honest truth is that most of what kept them alive was never medicine at all. It was what they ate every single day. That story's one tap away. I'm the Ancient Bro. Look after each other. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends.